Thank you for joining us for the September 3rd Cameron Peak Fire virtual public meeting. My name is Brant Porter. I'm a Public Information Officer with Rocky Mountain Team Black. The Cameron Peak Fire was last mapped at 23,137 acres, and it's currently 6% contained. We have 4 speakers for you tonight. First up is going to be incident meteorologist Corey Modis with the National Weather Service. Second is going to be Russ Long, Operations Section Chief with the Portland NEMO team. Third is Sheriff Justin Smith with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. And fourth is Incident Commander Troy Hagan with Rocky Mountain Team Black. But first, we have a special statement from Incident Commander B. Day of the Portland NEMO team.
All right, good evening, everyone. I just want to make you aware that 2 nights ago we did live flight a firefighter off of one of our forward operating bases. And that is a smaller base that we have firefighters come in to try and isolate, to separate, if you will, from the greater amount of firefighters that are working on the fire. He was assessed, and he did test positive for COVID. He was discharged, though, and currently in isolation, and we are supporting that individual as he goes through his recovery. I do want to let you know that the forward operating base had about 184 individuals in there. We are coordinating with the Larimer County Department of Public Health with the testing as well as the contact tracing. And definitely, as of tonight, we have narrowed that down to 23 individuals. It was the module that this person came off of that will be quarantined, as well as the personnel that assisted in with the medical. I will add that this release is posted on Facebook as well as NCWeb, so you can read the full amount. I'm just highlighting the important things. One of them, I just want to make note and really emphasize that this individual did not have any close contact with the public or the community. And again, we are following the county guidelines as we assist them. Of note, I want to let you know there's 850 firefighters that have been on this incident from 35 states over the period of this fire, and 4 have tested positive. 3 were tested positive last week and are being attended to, as well as the individual from last night. Thank you.
With that, we'll begin our briefing tonight with incident meteorologist Corey Modis.
Good evening. I'm Corey Modis, an incident meteorologist trainee here in the Cameron Peak Fire. We did have some fire activity today as we saw really dry conditions. We had pretty breezy winds, about 30 miles an hour. Temperatures were getting up into the low 80s out on the fire today, so it's quite a bit warmer than what we've been seeing the last few days. Coming up, we're going to see a continued stretch of this very dry weather. Tomorrow, winds aren't going to be quite as strong, but it's going to be dry and it's going to be warm. As we head into Saturday, that looks to be our warmest day. We're going to see temperatures out in the fire in the mid-80s. We're going to see really low relative humidities, which is critical fire weather conditions. So we do have a fire weather watch out from Saturday through Sunday and also Monday. So that's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on as temperatures get warm. Winds pick up each afternoon from Saturday through Monday, so it's going to be breezy, could drive some fire activity. And then as we head into Monday night and into Tuesday, we are looking at a pretty significant pattern change. We got a pretty strong cold front that's going to be coming down, and that's going to bring in much colder temperatures. It's going to bring in some precipitation with rain, and most likely we're going to see some snow in the high elevations as well. Could see some accumulating snow, but it's a little far out to have any specifics on that. So that's what we're looking at coming up with the weather. We do have a few days the next 4 days pretty much coming up, they're going to be pretty critical fire weather conditions.
Next up is Operations Section Chief Russ Long.
All right, thank you. Good evening. Russ Long, Operations Section Chief. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategy that we're currently putting into play out here with the tactics, and then some about the fire. And this is a very general map. So for your benefit, we have some photos that we'll put up on the screen to show you some of the areas that we're talking about here today. So as you've noticed, the smoke's back in the air. Things have dried out from the thunderstorms that we've had, and the fuels are dry and receptive. And as expected, the fire did pick up today, and in the places that we expected it to do so. So currently activities are going on in the Highway 14 corridor. This area here, probably many of you are familiar with, and we're currently working around where the Colorado Department of Transportation yard is, where they operate with their sheds for their road maintenance. Right now, as we speak, firefighters are burning around the structures in a controlled fashion to protect the structures from the advance on the north side of the canyon. Right now on the north side of the canyon, up on Green Ridge, is where most of the fire activity is and where the smoke that you see is coming from. As we go on up the canyon towards Chambers Lake, and there's a picture to show you what things look like around Chambers Lake, the fire is actually bumped up against the Continental Divide off to the west, and we actually have showed some containment where there can no longer be fire growth in this area right here. However, there is activity along the edge where it hasn't run into the rocks up in the high country. As we go north on the 103 road, the Laramie River, there's a slide there with a picture of the fuels and some of the smoke, and that was yesterday when I was up there. That's representative of what the fire is currently doing. These structures along here have all been protected. Everything is going well, and we continue to monitor that fire as it goes up onto Green Ridge for northerly movement. Now, our primary containment line is up by the Dead Man Road that cuts back across through the high country. So we have prepared these lines, and they're nearly complete. We still have personnel up in that area working that. And it comes all the way over to just below Redfeather Lakes. And then we have the containment line that comes south on the Manhattan Road that brings us back down to Highway 14. These lines are prepared, and we continue to reinforce those by doing brushing and chipping and cutting more material to make it safe, so that if the time comes that we need to burn out or fire these lines out, they are very defensible in a place that we can work from. From there, the work continues down Pingree Park. We have crews that are working back into the Comanche Wilderness and out the Crown Point Road. Now, we have several different containment lines that we've established so that we can try to get as close to the fire as possible. Currently, we have several hotshot crews working inside the Comanche Peak Wilderness, and we're using natural barriers where we can. We try to use mist tactics in there so we leave no trace when the fire is over with. And there's a picture there of a meadowy area that we'll use that's up against the heavy fuels in the wilderness. There are areas that we do have to cut with chainsaws, hand lines, in order to establish a containment line that we can burn out from in the future should the fire advance to a place and we have weather conditions that we can do so. All of this action is to keep that fire from moving south towards Rocky Mountain National Park and into that area. Very difficult country with heavy fuels. And you'll also see a slide of some of the snags that we deal with. So the snags are one of our biggest challenges as firefighters. They fall silently. They're weak to begin with, and when they catch on fire, they become very difficult for us to work around. So in much of the area is represented by that slide, and that all was caused by the mountain pine beetle that infested the area years ago, and still contending with those fuels that are out there. So things are going well. We're busy, day shift and a night shift. On the ground itself, we have 500 plus firefighters working the lines. The only place there aren't firefighters working is on the far west side up on the Continental Divide. The rest of the fire is currently staffed with 3 different areas that we call branches and people working out of spike camps. So lots of work to do. We'll be with this thing over the next couple days. Expect to see large amounts of smoke. The fire is within our containment lines. We have plans to defend them when the fire comes close, and we'll continue to do our work to get those lines closer to the fire and eventually protect all of the communities and the values at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Next up is Sheriff Justin Smith.
Good evening, Justin Smith, your Larimer County Sheriff. And first I want to share with you, normally when I hear meteorologists tell me that right after Labor Day, we're looking at rain and snow and cold, I'm not happy, but this year I got to confess, I'm pretty happy to hear that forecast, as I'm sure everybody out there is. I'm actually very pleased today to come back 2 days later and share with you some of the advancements we were able to make working with the fire managers on this and the fire management team on being able to ease down on a few of the evacuation zones. We had some that had been mandatory evacuations since very early on in the fire, but because of changing conditions and some progress on fire lines, we're able to back those out. I spoke of those in very general terms on Tuesday night, and tonight I want to talk to you about 3 separate areas that are impacted. The first one is going to be up on the northwest corner of the fire. For those that know the Laramie River Valley Road, as we had spoken before, along the Four Corners area on 103 was where we were stopping traffic and keeping mandatory evacuations. Based on some of the changes and things that happened, we're able to move it from that top corner at Four Corners, also known as County Road 99 and 103, down to the bottom end of where those 2 roads loop together on Laramie River Valley Road, to an area that's typically known as the Stub Creek area. It won't impact a lot of individuals, but there are some property owners off in this area of private property who will be able to get back into their residences and their property, and it also helps some of the ranches up in the area. So that's the first area that we're able to move from mandatory to voluntary evacuations. The second area that I spoke about was right along Highway 14. Previously we had held that at Rustic and kept a mandatory evacuation from Rustic all the way west. Again, because of changing fire conditions and progress that's made, we were able to open that up. And again, this is for residents, not for recreation, but we're able to get that. The first closure point on that is going to be a little bit further up, just below station number 2, the Poudre Canyon station number 2. And that gets right to the edge of Poudre City. So all the residents of Poudre City and property owners up there will be able to make it up to that area. While we are open to ways further up for property owners, we're able to do that, but there is still a closure right in that area past Poudre City, so that other individuals that don't have property are not going to be allowed in. And so we are able to open that area up to just about fish hatchery right now. And one of the things I will point out is with the fire activity that we're seeing and we're hearing from the fire managers, that could change in a moment's notice. If this fire really picks up and moves, those areas may not be available. So for property owners, that if you're coming a distance, I encourage you to call the sheriff's office first and check in with us to make sure that at that point in time we're good to go. I hate to see you make a trip when the fire activity got out, and we might have been able to share that with you. The last significant area that we're able to open back up to voluntary evacuations is the Pingree Park Road area from Highway 14 all the way up to the Pingree Park area. This includes the areas just past Pingree Park. It includes Pennock Pass, County Road 44H, and all the way up through there. And it includes the other areas surrounding there. There's a few neighborhoods back in here. Again, this is for property owners only. And what I want to point out is that this does not open any of Crown Point Road. That remains in the closure area for the Forest Service. We do still have staff at both ends of there to assure people that come up are not getting back in for recreation purposes, because we have assured the fire managers are going to do everything we can to keep folks from getting back there that could get in trouble into the forest. So those areas were a significant change. One more that really, again, affects the residents in the area is the ability for individuals to get up, at this point in time, up Manhattan Road to Goodell Corner. and from there they're able to come back on Boy Scout Ranch Road. So for the individuals that might need to get from Redfeather Lakes to Rustic or vice versa, they're able to make that loop out and around without having to get all the way back over to US Highway 287. And the reason that that change was able to be made was that fire crews made all the work they needed in that lower portion of Manhattan up to Goodell Corner. So with that, we do have those openings back up, but my reminder to folks, two pieces. One is if the fire picks up, those can and will change quickly. And number two is that it does not open up the recreational areas, and those will still be monitored to make sure that individuals don't get back into those areas which are deemed either in the fire zone or unsafe zones at this point in time. Thank you.
Next, Incident Commander Troy Hagan with Rocky Mountain Team Black.
Good evening, everyone. Troy Hagan, IC Team Black. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. As been explained by several speakers, what we got coming up is the fire weather for the next few days. As Russ explained, this is in rough terrain, heavy beetle kill. A lot of it isn't accessible, hence the direct lines. We got lots of equipment out there, lots of moving parts. We have 840 some personnel on this incident. And as B started out the talk with the whole COVID environment on top of the fire environment, it's another element for us to be dealing with. I feel pretty proud of everyone out there in the field. We got lots of people. We do have 4 cases, but as you know, this is airborne, it spreads, we can't see it, so you can't just bat it out of the sky. So all of our mitigations of wearing masks, washing hands, social distancing, modules of 1, are actually working out there on the ground. All the changes we practiced this spring and put into motion on several fires and incidents we've been on this summer. So proud of everyone out there and both teams coming together, working together to make this incident a success and represent our agency administrators, our communities, and protect the values at risk. So I'll be around for more questions later. That's what I got for you right now, and I'll turn it back to Brent.
Thanks, Troy. In addition to the speakers that we've had so far this evening, we also have Katie Donahue, District Ranger from the Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forest and Pawnee National Grasslands from the Canyon Lakes Ranger District. And we also have Brandon Muller from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. All of our speakers are available to answer questions if you have them. And the first question that we have tonight is actually for Russ in operations. And some folks, you mentioned mist tactics in constructing a line in the wilderness, and there are some folks that are interested in learning more about that.
All right, so on all fires, we try to reduce our impact anywhere we go, especially in wilderness areas, to protect those values that are there, to leave no trace. So what we'll do is we'll use as many natural barriers as possible, locate that line. Sometimes it might be the difference between maybe a quarter mile or a half a mile to get to maybe a rocky slope where we're right not on the fire's edge. But the other things that we do is we'll take and cut a very small line and preserve that fuel where firefighters, it takes longer, where they can move it back. We'll also come back and any trees that are cut, the stumps, will come back and cut them flush to the ground so that they're not nearly as visible, and then come back and even take the extra effort to take black ash and cover them over the top. We'll even go to the extent many times to take chainsaws and cut the top of the stump so that water can get in and they can decay quicker. So there's lots of things that we do, scattering our brush, disposing the brush. Sometimes it amounts to taking all the brush that was cut and piling it within the fire and burning it up so there's really no evidence of a cut branch. So a lot of different things that we can do to help leave no trace or no footprint in areas like that. And we always try to do that on any of the lands that we're on, except that in those areas where there's special constraints, we make an extra effort to do so.
Thank you. Next question. We have a question regarding folks who want to help and they're interested in patrolling campfires. So for the Forest Service, do you have a volunteer program where folks who want to help out can?
Thanks for that question. We've had a lot of folks ask if it's appropriate for them to patrol and stop folks from having illegal campfires. We do still have a lot of open forest area, and there will be, it's a holiday weekend, there's going to be a lot of people out in the woods this weekend. But we do ask you not to undertake what's essentially a law enforcement activity. So if you see someone with an illegal campfire, we encourage you to contact the Sheriff's Dispatch Center, and they'll either work with our law enforcement or sheriff's deputies to come out and respond to that. There are lots of opportunities to volunteer. There's going to be many following the fire, and you can look at volunteer.gov for different opportunities. Right now, folks are really trying to focus on suppression efforts, and I know that we have lots of people who'd like to come out and help and bring food and things like that, but we're trying to keep people safe and reduce exposure. So some of the things that you can do right from home and that are safe are contribute to the Wildland Firefighter Fund. They help folks that are sick or that are injured on fires and support the personnel that are out here doing this dangerous work. But we do really encourage you to not take things on yourself. You know, if you want to share information, that's great. They've got messages all over the Facebook feed for the fire and for the forest, and I'm sure for the Sheriff's Department as well, now that we're in statewide restrictions, to help folks understand. So you can certainly, share what the rules are, but don't take that on yourselves. We don't want to put anybody in an unsafe situation. Thanks.
Thank you for answering that. The next question is, are there any chances that Unit 19 will be open to hunt by September 12th? Which this is kind of a Colorado Parks and Wildlife question, and it's kind of a Forest Service question. So we'll go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Brandon Muller first.
Thank you for the question. As far as whether or not GMU 19 will be open or not, obviously Parks and Wildlife doesn't control access to the vast majority of GMU 19. If folks have a hunting license for GMU 19 for either the September muzzleloader season, which kind of was September 12th is indicating in the question, feel free to come into our office. We can help exchange that out for one later in the year, or we can get you your points and your money back for that license. But as far as access is concerned, it's going to be more of a Forest Service question.
For folks who tuned in back on Tuesday night, we talked a lot about this, and there's actually some really great information back on that video. Really, nothing has changed. The closures are in place to protect people's safety, and we're not going to change them until we feel like it's safe to access these areas. For folks who recreate back here, you know that there's lots of interconnecting roads and trails, and with the fire activity picking up as it has been over the last couple days, and it comes and goes depending on the weather, we want to make sure that we're not allowing anybody to put themselves in an unsafe situation. So unfortunately right now we don't have a date or a fixed time in the future. That's totally going to depend on the behavior of the fire. But I would encourage folks to reach out to CPW if you had plans and work with them to figure out what kind of accommodations can be made so that you can change your plans if you don't feel comfortable keeping them. Thanks.
For Sheriff Smith, and some folks would like to know if they do not have their credential, but they do have proof of residency, will they be allowed into their properties?
Thank you. The preference obviously is to have the credentials. However, we are understanding that's not possible for everybody. Now keep in mind at this point in time, if they're looking at the zones that are voluntary evacuations, there aren't the restrictions other than we try to just generally verify that it's a resident. We aren't necessarily using the credentials for that. So if you've got the credentials, by all means carry those with you. If you don't, certainly if your driver's license shows that address, or if you have some other proof, as we've spoken about before on a bill from from something on your property, utility bill, et cetera. And we'll certainly work with folks on that. Again, I encourage folks to get that credentialing if they can, but if they can't, we'll do our best to work with everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. We have a question about fire activity on the southeast side of the fire today, or southwest side of the fire today, rather. And I was curious if Russ might be able to come up and tell us a little bit about what happened on the southeast side today.
So on the southwest side, was that the question? Southwest side, okay. Down here. So there wasn't any major reports that came in from that area. Most of the activity that I was aware of that happened today and know that is occurring is up in that Green Ridge area just north of Highway 14. We did, however, today out here in an area called Grass Lake right here, we had a spot last night from a small run on the interior of the fire, and it spotted out into the heavy dead fuels. So what we did about that was we didn't want this area right here to gain a bunch of energy today, and we did run Type 1 helicopters on that as there's a continuous fuel bed to the east headed towards Pingree Park. We did do work there. I know there is activity on the southern end of the fire, but that wasn't the major part of the activity. As we go along, we'll continue to see more heat on the edges and the perimeter as things continue to dry out and become more active. We do have an air attack. That's the name that we use for our aerial supervision. So we call him up, and he currently has been over the fire through the day and lets the ground resources know where the activity is in relation to them, where things might be that they can't see, and help give directions. Also works directly with the helicopters to put bucket work wherever we need that, to put water on hot spots that we determine that we want to do that. So as far as specifics on the heat on the south end, I don't have that exactly, but we are monitoring that entire edge all day long.
Thank you. And the next question is going to be for the sheriff. And I'm hopeful that you know what this person's asking about. Is the road closure on 73C towards 67J for non-residents? They commute that road daily, and it's near Lost Lakes.
Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to step up here to the map and see if I can confirm. So what we've got, you know what? I'm going to ask you to see. There's 86, 66. What were the numbers on it again?
The numbers on that were 63C and 67J. 73C and 67J.
Oh, up in Creed. Okay. I don't believe that's covered by any closures at this point.
It's in a recreation closure.
But for folks, we don't have a road closure. We're not staffing any road closures on that, but they are closed for recreational. So for individuals going up the Creedmoor Lakes Road that have properties up there, they should still be able to access. But again, anywhere that goes off into forest is going to be closed. But the county road access is open to residents up there.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question's for you too, sir.
It's not always good to be popular, but hey.
Some folks want to know that the part of Buckhorn, 44H, had a voluntary evacuation lifted a couple of days ago. So they should not get credentials yet, right?
We would encourage anybody in those zones that have been in voluntary or mandatory, if they have the ability to do credentials. You know, what we've got here, looking the wrong direction, I apologize, not made for TV. The challenge that we've got is we still believe this fire is going to be around for a while. It has potential to get back into those areas. So if you were anywhere in a voluntary or mandatory zone at any point in time, we encourage you to consider getting credentialed. It's not going to be necessary in the immediate future, but it's good to have if things do go in that direction.
Great, thank you. So with regards to structure protection teams getting property owner permissions for activities, how do property owners give that permission folks are curious about that. I think that might be a question that Russ might be able to answer for us. Folks are curious with regard to giving permission to structure protection teams to come in and do work. They're curious how they give that permission and how that whole process works.
Yeah, unless it's urgent, we're currently working on the National Forest System lands, and we're working with the Larimer County Sheriff for what we will do on those private lands distant from the fire. When the fire is right up to a house, we do what we need to do to save your property. And we take every precaution to take down only any trees or any vegetation that we have to save that. But for the structure protection and defense that's happening further away from the fire, we're working closely with the local fire chiefs and the fire authorities to work with the landowners for that. We have not commenced doing that work yet, and currently only cutting brush and things around the outside near the National Forest System lands and the road systems.
So it seems like we've concluded with the questions that have been coming in. So we thank everybody for joining tonight. One thing I would like to add is that on the story map for the Cameron Peak fire, and you can get to that story map through the NCWeb page for the incident. That story map on the closures section also now has the hunting units as part of that story map. So for all of the questions regarding hunting units and open forest areas and all that sort of thing, all those can overlay over the top of each other. And a lot of those questions can be answered there. That's a new feature that we added to the map today, considering there's been a lot of interest in that. Other than that, we thank you. We thank our panelists for coming and joining us tonight. And we thank you for joining as well. We'll have a full update for you in the morning. Good night.